Hanabi studied herself in the mirror and mentally patted herself on the back. She'd managed to assemble an outfit that was cute, sexy, and innocent in 15 minutes, beating her previous record by a whole hour. She contemplated putting on lipstick but decided against it. If someone spotted her when she was sneaking out, and saw the lipstick, they'd assume things and start more rumors. Hanabi glanced at the clock, 6:30. She had 30 minutes to sneak out the estate and get to Naruto. She'd shredded the note and burned the pieces. She had no need for it as she'd memorized the directions. With one last look in the mirror, she slid her foot in her shoes and slipped on a black cloak. The cloak was necessary. She'd never make it out of the estate if anyone saw what she was wearing. Grabbing her ninja gear, Hanabi locked her door and jumped out her window. Hinata made her way down the hall. She had an appointment at 7. The success of her plan to take over the estate depended heavily on the outcome of this meeting. Hinata scowled. If her father hadn't renounced her as heir, she wouldn't have to go through all this trouble. That and if Hanabi wasn't born. Hinata entered the dining room and was shocked to see that the room was empty save for a few servants. Usually her father was seated at the head of the old cedar table, Hanabi next to him on one side, Neji on the other side, and Hinata opposite Hiyashi with a few elders scattered between them. But today the table stood lonely. Good evening, Miss Hinata. Will you be having dinner tonight? Oh, good evening, Mameha Ba-sama. Hinata said, bowing to the cook. How are you? I'm fine. Mameha replied, taking a seat. Just old and tired. Where is everybody? Hinata asked, taking a seat next to her surrogate grandmother. Mameha sighed. Well, Hiyashi is having a secret emergency meeting with the council. Mameha said, rolling her eyes. She knew any and everything that went on in the estate. So he and some of the other elders are skipping dinner. Neji's with Tenten, so he's out, and one of the guards just told me little Hanabi sneaked out of the estate. Hinata frowned at this. She couldn't risk having Hanabi follow her like last time. She sneaked out. Yep. Mameha said, nodding her head. Said she looked suspicious, moving fast and sticking to the shadows, and followed her to the edge of the branch family. Mameha smiled. He also said he blinked and she vanished. He searched the entire estate and couldn't find her. Nobody saw or heard her. She's getting craftier these days. Hanabi, moving with stealth. Hinata asked herself, not quite believing it. Mameha's smile widened and her eyes twinkled. I asked myself the same question. When has little Hanabi ever wanted to be unnoticed? I smell a scandal brewing. Mameha stood up. I presume you're skipping dinner also. Hinata sent her a weak smile. I'm very sorry, Mameha Ba-sama, but I've got a mission tonight. Mameha smirked and narrowed her eyes suggestively at Hinata. I didn't see any of the Hokage's messenger Nin today. It's a personal mission. Mameha's smirk widened into a smile. Well, have fun and try not to wear yourself out too much now. She wiggled her eyebrows. Hinata blushed at Mameha's innuendo. You can send my dinner to my room, please. I'll be back around 11. Hinata said. Oh sure, that's no problem. I'll even stay up and warm it up for you. I'm quite sure you'll be starving after your mission. Hinata gave Mameha a half bow and dashed out of the room, leaving Mameha cackling about how red her face was. Somewhere on the Hyuga estate, I have reason to believe that Hinata may try to eliminate Hanabi to ensure herself the position of clan leader. Hiyashi told the occupants in the dimly lit room. He sat at the head of a small oval table. Because of poor lighting, everybody's face was hidden by shadows, except Hiyashi, who sat directly underneath the only working light bulb. What do you propose we do about this threat? One of the shadowed faces asked. Confine her to the estate. I think it will be in our best interest if we had her shadowed, for protection. Hiyashi said, patiently waiting for their feedback. Why not confine her? An elderly female voice asked. Hiyashi was well prepared to back up his motion. We can't confine her because, 1. Hinata will get suspicious, and 2. It will be easier for Hinata to dispose of Hanabi if she's closer to her and can predict where she will be. It's been proven that Hanabi can be read like clockwork if restricted to a small area, so I need not go on. What's to stop Hinata from attacking her out of the estate? The same lady asked again. Wouldn't allowing Hanabi to roam freely as she does now make it easier for Hinata? Actually, it wouldn't. Hiyashi started, facing the woman. If you hadn't noticed, Hanabi draws attention to herself, even when she doesn't want it. What does that have to do with anything? Hiyashi almost cursed. How could someone so wise be so dense? It means that people are always watching her. She can't do anything without me knowing it. Really now? Then you should know by now that she sneaked off the estate. An old guy said. This gave rise to an outbreak of muttering and silent questioning. Hiyashi's jaw tensed. As far as he knew, Hanabi was sulking in her room. He was going to have a little talk with his daughter, whenever he caught up with her. No, I was not aware. The old guy smirked. So much for knowing her every move. Hiyashi tightened his fist under the table. How dare the council mock him? Didn't they know he had the power to kill them all? Hiyashi smirked. He'll show them. Since you're so informed, can you tell us where she's headed? Hiyashi asked the old man. I was only told that she got off the estate unnoticed. The old man, sensing that Hiyashi was goading him, asked, Are you sure you are capable of handling Hanabi? This question sent everyone's undivided attention to Hiyashi. Hiyashi smiled at the old man. Of course I'm capable. Unlike you, I don't need to place spies around or ingratiate people to find out what she's done. You see, I'm so beyond you, I already know where she's headed and what she is going to do. The real question is, are you capable of handling the estate's security? What are you talking about? The old man narrowed his eyes at Hiyashi, who just smugly smirked. Hiyashi, for dramatic effects, folded his hands on the table and said, How is it that two people, at different times, entered the estate, passed through the branch family, entered the main family, wrote notes and left it in both my daughter's rooms, and had enough time to go down to the kitchen to have a snack? And all of this went unnoticed by the guards. How did these two people breach security without you knowing? Do you care to explain? The old man lifted his chin proudly in the air, when everyone turned to look at him. He could feel the questions and reprimands silently being thrown at him. He'd be damned if he let Hiyashi destroy the little power and dignity he had left. If these people supposedly got past my security, how then do you know about them? Hiyashi, satisfied he put the old man in his place, leaned back in his chair and said, Because most of the time my Byakugan is always on. And I recognized two distinct chakra bodies, different than the average Hyuga. I didn't pursue it any further because I assumed you let them in for some purpose. The old man, who was the former clan leader, looked Hiyashi in the eye. How is this relevant to the topic at hand? Hiyashi sat back up. It was time to end this meeting. He was missing dinner and Mameha's passion fruit pie was on the menu. It's relevant because if Hinata had sent someone to assassinate Hanabi, they would have succeeded. They'd have slipped right through our so-called impenetrable security. He has a point. An old lady said, We need to wrap this up. I second Hiyashi's motion, have Hanabi shadowed. Hiyashi smirked as the majority of the council agreed with his decision. They always did what he wanted in the end. Do you really think Hinata would assassinate Hanabi? A cheery old voice asked. Hiyashi thought for a second, remembered the conversation he and Hinata shared in the hospital. I wouldn't put it below her. Hiyashi said grimly. This meeting is adjourned. With this said, everyone, except Hiyashi, faded into the shadows and disappeared until the room was empty. Hiyashi balanced his chin on the palm of his hand and stared at a portrait of Hinata hanging on the wall opposite him. Exactly what are you planning, oh daughter of mine? Somewhere in Konoha, Hanabi stood in front of a giant iron gate that was shaped like a giant spiral. She glanced around and saw nothing but trees and moonlight. The only thing she saw through the gate was a wall of trees. The closest house was at least 2 miles away, if she remembered correctly. This was one part of Konoha she'd never seen in her life, and she'd seen plenty. If something was to happen to her, she figured it'd be about a week before anyone found her body. You're kinda late. The kunai came so fast that Naruto barely had time to catch it, much less dodge it. Paranoid much? Naruto asked, holding the kunai between two fingers. He grinned and stood next to her. A small trickle of blood ran down the back of his hand, and glistened in the moonlight. Hanabi flushed, spotted the trickle of blood on his hand. What the hell? Why did you catch it? Naruto stared at the blood on his hand and wiped it on his shirt. It's just a little scratch. Besides, you threw it too fast for me to dodge it. He held the kunai out to her. Hanabi grimaced. Ah, throw it away. I don't need it. Naruto shrugged and pocketed it. This wasn't too hard to find, was it? Naruto asked, while opening the gate. It opened with a little creak. Naruto turned, motioned for her to come, and stopped in his tracks. Hanabi walked through the gate, which opened to reveal a small clearing. What? She said when she noticed Naruto staring at her. Any particular reason you're wearing a cloak on such a humid night as this? Naruto asked. She'd almost forgotten she was wearing the cloak. She smirked at him and dramatically took off the cloak, and flung it somewhere on the side. Wow, was all Naruto could say. He needed a few moments to take it all in. The first thing he noticed were the legs, which were encased with fashionably thin, off-white socks that stopped just on top of her knee. Then there was the mini black skirt that stopped barely to her mid-thigh. This was then followed by a white shirt with dark red letters that said, "Caution." Her ensemble was completed with a black mini long-sleeve jacket that stopped mid-stomach. She'd given herself a few bangs and pulled the rest of her hair into a ponytail that stopped to the middle of her back. This was too much for him to bear. He scanned her again and felt the blood in his head migrate south. He was going to have a hard time resisting the urge to repeat what happened earlier in the hospital. Hanabi gnawed on her lip when she realized Naruto was still staring at her. Maybe this wasn't the best thing she should have worn. What? Hanabi asked, slightly embarrassed. It doesn't look good. If he said yes, she was going to go bury herself in small dark hole. Naruto turned, beckoned her to follow, and set off down a path of night daisies. Hanabi, mortified that he didn't answer, followed him. Hey, she started, poking him in his back. Don't ignore me. Answer the question. In response, Naruto quickened his pace, and Hanabi pursued. Their shadows danced about them as they traversed the path. It sloped up a hill through a field of moonflowers and giant willow, cedar, and oak tress, leading to a cottage completely covered in vines and leaves. Moonlight filtered through the broad leaves of the trees, casting ominous shadows about the place. Hanabi suddenly stopped in the middle of the field. The sudden beauty of the field captivated her. So pretty. I know, right? Naruto whispered, suddenly behind her. She didn't even hear when he moved, if he moved at all. She turned to face him and he was staring at her with those deep blue eyes. A vivid memory of one of her fantasies flashed in her mind, and she couldn't help but blush. The wind picked up and blew a few stray clouds, covering the moon. Hanabi looked into his eyes again. Instead of the calm and steady behind them, she saw a maelstrom, a struggle, and she became cautious. Hanabi, Naruto said in a desperate tone. What? She whispered. The calm and steady was no longer there. Instead, there was something she couldn't recognize: anger, lust, frustration. No. A combination, maybe. I really like you. He took a step towards her and she took a step in retreat. Her heart was fluttering. She was so not prepared for that. Those simple words could mean a lot. He took another step towards her and she took another step back. He smirked when her back hit the cool trunk of the giant cedar tree. Hanabi's heartbeat increased. She didn't like the way her body was responding to the way he was looking at her. Who was she kidding? She liked it. She liked it a whole damn lot. Heck, she wanted him to do more than just look at her. He placed his hand on her cheek. It was warm against his hand, and tense. As if he was fighting to restrain his hand from pinning to her the tree. Her heart started beating at impossible speeds when the image of Naruto pinning her to the tree flashed in her mind. Her body wanted to take the next instinctive step, but the logic and common sense in her mind was fighting against it, and losing badly. It was like mentally resisting someone who is physically pulling you away. When he lightly brushed a thumb over her cheek, the common sense and logic in her mind was TKO'd. He gave her a teasing feather kiss, provoking unstable waters. She let out a frustrated growl, wrapped her hands around his neck and pulled him to her. Looking into his eyes, she kissed him, hard. Naruto responded by cupping his hand behind her neck, angling her mouth, effectively deepening the kiss. And then they made hot, passionate sekihan on the forest floor. The end of the story. I'm only kidding, I couldn't resist putting it there. Closing parenthesis. Naruto ran his hands down her back, and she ran his hands up his shirt. He pressed himself harder to her and she responded by kissing him harder. It wasn't until she patted his back insistently that they broke apart for some air and much needed control. Well, Naruto gasped. Hanabi looked at him incredulously. Never in her life had anyone kissed her like that before. It's a good thing that she ran out of air, she thought, or they would have done naughty things on the floor. She couldn't believe that just happened. Wow, Hanabi stated, catching her breath. She looked up at Naruto. She'd slid to the floor sometime after the kiss. He looked even more appealing to her now that she'd messed up his hair a bit. She rubbed her temples, in an attempt to clear her mind and settle her nerves. I so want to kiss you again, Naruto started, making her feel all tingly inside, but I don't think that's so wise right now. Hanabi slowly stood up, nodding her head in agreement. I can't believe that just happened. She stated. I know, right? Naruto chuckled. He was more attracted to her now than ever. He studied her. Her hair was ruffled and her face was flushed. Threw in the puffy lips and the way she was provocatively leaning against the tree, and he might not be able to restrain himself. You're a poor liar. What? Hanabi asked. That particular statement yanked her out of her thoughts and back to reality. What did you just say? Naruto smiled wickedly. He'd successfully distracted them both from thinking too hard about what just happened, and he was about to irritate Hanabi. For some odd reason, he'd grown to like irritating her. It made her more appealing to him. I said you are a poor liar, and the moment ago just proved it. Naruto said, walking back up to the cabin. What the hell are you talking about? Hanabi asked, flummoxed. Naruto stopped suddenly and turned around to face her. I distinctly remember at the beginning of this story, he pointed a finger at her. You stating that I was ugly and repulsive. And now you're attracted to me. Hanabi blushed and raised her chin defiantly in the air. I haven't the slightest idea what you are talking about. It's okay, Naruto said, grinning. Don't try to deny it. Mortified, Hanabi shouted, just shut up. What the hell did you bring me here for anyway? I could be doing other important stuff right now. Naruto smirked. Then why the hell did you come? She was getting pissed but she wasn't angry yet. Hanabi paused. No witty remark was popping in her head. Then what the hell did you bring me here for? Use your empty head. Naruto smirked when her eyes narrowed and she started poking him painfully in the chest. Maybe it wasn't so wise to have an angry Hyuga poking him in the chest. Listen here, idiot, Hanabi started. She didn't get far in her rant because Naruto kissed her and tripped her, and in a reflex action, she grabbed onto him and he fell on top of her. Hanabi stared up at him. She'd kind of gotten used to his weight on top of her. Why are you always on top? Hanabi asked, grinning. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stay mad at him. Well, a familiar voice stated. Why are you always on top, Naruto? Naruto and Hanabi groaned in unison. And to make things even worse, another voice asked. So the rumors were true. Hanabi sighed. She'd bet her whole right arm her that she and Naruto were going to be the hot topic tomorrow. They might even mention them on Konoha Entertainment. Sakura frowned. She almost felt guilty for selling out her closest friend. Then again, 30,000 ryo for a picture was hard to turn down. She suddenly thought of something. Kakashi-sensei, you think if we get a video of them, they'll pay more? Kakashi paused. Now there was a thought. I like your way of thinking. In fact, meet me at the training grounds tomorrow, around 4. He just remembered there was something he had to take care of. If he didn't, Jiraiya would strangle him. He disappeared in a whirl of leaves. Sakura followed suit. By the time Naruto caught up with Hanabi, they were a few feet from the Hyuga estate. Hey, stop for a minute. Naruto asked, pulling lightly on Hanabi's sleeve. She stopped and turned to face him. Damn, he was sexy. She wondered what would have happened if certain people hadn't intruded. In a way, she was sort of glad they did, or else she would have ended up doing something she might have regretted. What? Naruto slid his hands in his back pocket, and hunched his shoulders. This was the first time, as far as he could remember, that he'd ever been nervous. I want to see why you again. His face was cherry red. Hanabi bit down hard on her tongue, to keep herself from smiling. He was actually asking her out, and he was nervous as hell. Imagine, the infamous unpredictable ninja, a Hokage hopeful, was nervously asking her out. She wondered what his expression would be if she told him to get lost. Nah, she wasn't that cold. Hanabi moved a few strands of hair from her face. You're looking at me now, right? She smirked. This was sort of fun. His face was turning redder. And not like that, Naruto stammered. He took in a deep breath. He'd never been nervous before, it was disconcerting. If she told him no, he might bash his head in the wall. I mean, I want to take you somewhere. Tomorrow. It was taking a lot of her concentration to keep herself from laughing. Hanabi chewed on her bottom lip for a second. Tell you what, you see that place over there? She motioned her hand toward the Hyuga estate. That's my prison, in all sense of the word. If you can present a valid reason to my warden as to why I should leave, then I'll do whatever you want to do tomorrow. If you can get me out, that is. Naruto thought for a moment, and then sent her a wicked grin that made her heart jump. You have a deal then. And to make it binding. Hanabi in a breath, when Naruto suddenly pulled her towards him and plundered her mouth. Hanabi started to protest but, after a few seconds, leaned into Naruto and started to kiss him back, with much enthusiasm. When Naruto ran a hand down her back, she pushed away from him, before she lost herself. She looked around, her face red. Thankfully, there was no one on the street. Naruto smirked at her. I'll see you tomorrow. With that, he disappeared in a poof of smoke. Hanabi took in a huge breath to settle her nerves. She had to learn to control herself, or else. But the question she kept asking herself was, would the, or else, part be so bad? She decided that if she was going to do the, or else, part, she had to get to know him first. She walked through the main entrance gate of the estate, her thoughts full of Naruto. She decided to walk around the Branch family when she saw two elders talking in the courtyard. She didn't want to be harassed. Hanabi slowly walked along the outskirts of the Branch family, near the wall to the woods. She wasn't in any rush to see her father. She pushed him to the back of her mind. Just thinking of him was upsetting. She felt the air pressure change and quickly hid in the shadows of the trees lining the wall. Hinata appeared in a swirl of leaves a few feet from where she was. Hanabi wondered where she went. Since she hadn't seen her sister, face to face, in a while, she emerged from the shadows saying, I smell failure. Hinata spun around and studied her sister. She smirked and said, you're home early. What? No one wants to rent the whore tonight. The smirk fell off of Hanabi's face. That really stung, not that she'd let it show. Says the bitch that nobody ever needed or wanted. Hanabi retorted. She eyed her sister with disgust. Is there anything you're good at besides being pathetic? Hanabi didn't wait for her to retort. Don't answer that. Maybe we'll ship you off to some feudal lord in the middle of nowhere, that way we'll never hear about the worthless Hyuga again. They started to circle each other. Hinata glared at her sister. I wouldn't be surprised if that same feudal lord asked for you, knowing your reputation. Haiku says you're impressive on your back. I wondered if he heard that. Could be. Then again, you are public property. Hanabi fingered the kunai concealed under her skirt, on her thigh. Touché, dear sister. Then again, All the unwanted Hyuga band together. I suppose they only have each other to talk to. How does it feel to be a mistake? No, Hiyashi's only mistake. Hinata smirked. You're his mistake. He should have saved Mother instead of you. Hanabi scowled, withdrawing her kunai. Artifacts of value and worth often come with a high price. The same thing can't be said about you though. Hinata scowled and threw the shuriken she had between her fingers. Hanabi deflected all of them with the kunai, and then threw it at Hinata, who dodged it by merely her head to one side. Byakugan, Juken. The two sisters came together, channeling enough chakra at each other to cause the air and trees around them to shimmer. They separated, circled, and reunited, exchanging blows and profanities. Hanabi aimed low while Hinata simultaneously aimed high, and they cancelled each other out, rolling to the floor. Hanabi was faster getting up, and so charged at Hinata, aiming for her torso, a fatal blow if followed through. She would have connected too, if Neji hadn't appeared out of nowhere and deflected her with a small rotation. Hanabi landed hard on her. Out of pure frustration she seized a rock and hefted at Neji's head. He dodged it and replied, "What were you thinking?" Hanabi saw Hinata's smirk from behind Neji and turned her head. As if seeing through Hanabi's eyes, Neji whirled around to Hinata. "And you should know better." Hinata lowered her eyes in embarrassment. Hanabi turned her back towards her sister. "I will see the two of you tomorrow," Neji stated. "It is imperative that I talk to the two of you, especially you Hanabi." With that said, Neji disappeared into the night. The two sisters stood there, with their backs to each other. "Hinata, why must we dislike each other?" Hanabi asked softly. It was a thought that was always running through her mind. Hinata stiffened. She'd never heard such regret in her sister's tone of voice. She sighed. She often wondered the same question too. While walking away, Hinata replied, "Because Hiyashi demands that I do." The wind picked up and Hinata disappeared in a gust of leaves, leaving Hanabi pondering deeply about what she'd said. Hinata was tired of fighting with her. Hanabi heard it in the tiredness of her sigh. She was so caught up in her thoughts that she didn't notice the person dashing ahead of her on the rooftops. Hanabi heard a muffled yelp and pitched up in her bed. Scanning the darkness of her bedroom, she found the source of the sound, a figure crouching beneath her window. Cautiously watching the person, she withdrew a kunai she had hidden underneath her pillow. Aiming at the center of the person, she threw the kunai, and was shocked when the kunai hit the wall with a thud. She heard the soft click of the lock and looked toward the door to see the person standing there. Hanabi was about to scream for help but a hand clamped over mouth, muffling it. Hanabi bit her tongue to wake herself up. Why in all that was good, that someone had to attack her when she was in deep slumber? Hanabi suddenly stilled, gathering her and focusing her chakra. The person who was holding her mouth pressed a kunai to her throat, and was about to slice her neck open when she released the chakra she'd gathered at her chakra points. The man was forced backward and the kunai fell out of his hand. Hanabi jumped off her bed, whilst activating her Byakugan. She backed herself into a corner of her room, that way she could see the two people who'd come in to assassinate her. Assassinate. Someone wanted her dead. With that thought in her head, she basked in the adrenaline rush and the instinct of self-preservation. With those two body mechanisms fueling her, she focused on her adversaries. She was going for the kill. The person who was by the door rushed towards her, kunai extended. Hanabi ducked under the ninja's outstretched arm, and elbowed him in his lower spine, which sent him stumbling forward. She charged towards the other one, aiming a strike at his torso. The person deflected it and barraged Hanabi with ruthless attacks, which she evaded with ease. She suddenly morphed into a crouching position and landed a few juken strikes at the person's thighs, which made him stumbled. Taking advantage of this, she rose up and kneed the person in the solar plexus. After that, she transmuted into a kata of painful strikes and kicks. It was a fighting style different than the traditional Hyuga taijutsu. This style allowed for more flexible moves and improvisation. She ended the kata with a flying roundhouse kick to the ninja's head, which sent him crashing into the lamp, semi-conscious. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a kunai flying at her, and she merely her head to the side to dodge it. She turned around and faced the ninja who'd thrown it. He seemed ready to fight. He'd underestimated her speed, which was why she was able to land that hit on him in the first place. A mistake he wasn't likely to make again. At least he was able to recover while the other ninja was getting thrashed. Juken. Hanabi reverted back to her form of Hyuga-style fighting. She figured the person saw her in her other fighting style, and would have tried to figure out the basic mechanics of the style, thus being able to know how to avoid or evade her attacks. The person probably knew how to fight against a Hyuga, hence trying to assassinate her. But what the ninja probably didn't know was that the Hyuga fighting style of the main branch members were different than the branch family. Main family taijutsu was based on branch family taijutsu, but the main family members were allowed to customize it, making their own style of it. Thus each person in the main family had a similar yet different fighting style. Channeling chakra into her palms and feet, Hanabi charged at the other ninja. She feinted a roundhouse kick to his ribs, but the ninja didn't fall for it, and kept up his guard. It was just as she suspected, this person knew the concepts of branch family fighting. She sent a kick at his head, which the person caught. She released the chakra in her foot, and the ninja released his hold, clutching his hand in pain. With the help of her Byakugan, she targeted his vital organs. With an incredible burst of speed, she slithered around his punch, which left his torso open to attack. Hanabi took advantage of this and slammed her palms in his chests, releasing chakra as she did. The ninja stumbled back into a wall, to which Hanabi gleefully took advantage of and commenced her version of Hinata's 100 Palms of Fury. Hers became more vicious with each hit that landed. Her attacks were so forceful, and her chakra so sharp, that she was literally rupturing the ninja's back. She stopped at around 37, as the ninja was now limp and dying. The ninja slowly slid to the floor, painting a red mark on her pristine wall. Hanabi reined in her emotions, and lowered her fighting spirit. Maybe she overdid it. She crouched down in front of the ninja and asked, "Who sent you?" The ninja smiled at her, blood slowly spewing forth from his lips. "You really want to know?" The ninja asked, in a raspy voice. "Who sent you?" Hanabi asked, placing a palm over the ninja's heart. The ninja chuckled, a hideous sound. "A Hyuga sent me." Hanabi released the chakra she had channeled into her hand, effectively obliterating a section of the ninja's heart. She didn't have time for games, someone intended to kill her, and she wanted to find out whom. She watched the ninja gasp for breath as his lungs filled up with blood, suffocating him. It was a slow and painful death. When the ninja was dead and gone, she was about to close his eyes when she noticed something for the first time. This ninja had pupil-less eyes, similar to her own. Hanabi removed the headband with the hidden leaf's insignia on it from the ninja's forehead, and gasped. Sure enough, there was a caged bird seal there. She prevented the seal from activating with a quick jutsu she'd copied from an elder. The seal destroyed a Hyuga's body within 5 minutes of their death, which was why autopsies were rarely given in the Hyuga estate. The fact that her now dead assassinator was a Hyuga brought about huge complications she would have to deal with. It also gave her something to think about. It was highly unlikely Hinata was behind this, as she usually directly approached her. This meant that someone else was after her, someone from the council or the branch family. The only question was why. It wasn't until she heard a cough that she remembered the other ninja who'd come after her. Hanabi turned around to see the ninja crouching in the window sill, ready to escape. "Wait!" she exclaimed, racing towards the ninja, who, for obvious reasons, jumped out of the window. Damn, Hanabi thought, while grabbing a robe from off her bed. She hated giving chase to anything. She jumped out of the window while shrugging into her robe. The roof was cold underneath her bare feet. The ninja was only a few yards ahead of her, which meant that he was still injured. Otherwise, he'd have already teleported. "Stop!" she shouted, as she glided from rooftop to rooftop after the ninja. Damn you. She threw the kunai she had taken out of the wall when she was leaving her room at the ninja, who just dodged it. Hanabi kept shouting at the ninja to stop, thus waking up the clan as she chased the ninja. Lights and muffled voices were coming to life as she ran by the houses. They were nearing the entrance gate to the estate now. She doubted that she'd be able to catch the ninja, as she was losing her adrenaline rush. So, she used her Byakugan to memorize the ninja's chakra network. That'll have to suffice her for now. Hanabi stopped and landed right in front of the branch family. She watched as the guards at the main gate gave a feeble attempt to stop the ninja. Kissing her teeth, she made her way back to the main family residence via rooftop. Repeat what you are trying to say again. I didn't quite get it. Hiyashi said, as he watched his angry daughter pace back and forth in his room. Hanabi turned angry eyes at her father. Do you ever listen to anything I say? She said, in a disapproving tone. What part of someone just tried to assassinate me don't you understand? Hiyashi sighed. It was after 4 in the morning, and quite frankly, he wasn't ready to get up yet. He was still in the throes of slumber. He had been sleeping peacefully when Hanabi had barged in his room, making a ruckus about someone trying to kill her. Did you catch the person? Hiyashi asked, rubbing his eyes in an attempt to wake himself up. It was too early in the morning to be bothered. Hanabi was ready to pull out all of Hiyashi's glorious hair strand by strand. This man was acting as if it wasn't a big matter. She took in a deep breath and reined in her temper. Then, in strained voice, said, I killed one of them, and the other got away. Hanabi was somewhat happy to see her father's eyes widen when she mentioned she killed one of them. I think it'd be better if you just come and see the scene for yourself. Hanabi stated, leaving the room. Hiyashi followed her down the hall to her room. A few servants were rising out of the quarters, inquiring about what happened, and if they needed to be available. Mameha was one of the people who woke up. She immediately followed Hiyashi and Hanabi. Hanabi had to kick the door open, as one of the ninjas had locked it. She motioned them inside and closed the door behind her, to keep away the curious and the nosy. Good heavens! Mameha exclaimed when she saw the state of Hanabi's room. Bits and pieces of broken furniture was scattered about the room. There was a few kunai marks in the wall, where she was fighting with the dead ninja. There were a few blood drops on the window. On the wall by the door, there was a huge red mark, as if someone threw a bucket of red paint of the wall carelessly. And just underneath that mark, lay the dead ninja, who had been marinating in his own blood, and whatever else had leaked out of his body. Hiyashi gathered his robes and crouched over the ninja to examine him. Hanabi watched as his eyes widened upon recognizing the ninja's features. This is a Hyuga. Hanabi finished for him. Someone from the branch family, to be exact. Mameha Ba-sama, do you know him? Mameha studied the body for a minute. She'd seen death occur too many times and ways to be shocked by this. There was something familiar about the body she couldn't put her finger on it. She turned towards Hanabi, who was obviously shaken despite the calm facade she was wearing, and asked, Did you kill him? Hanabi nodded. He was sent to assassinate me. There were 2 of them, but one of them got away. I don't think the other one was a Hyuga though, or if they were working together. I think they both were sent by different people and just happened to meet up here. Hanabi said, while sitting on her bed. Assassinate? Who would try to kill you? Mameha asked, completely baffled. That's what I love to find out. Hanabi said dryly. Then what about Miss Hinata? Did they try to assassinate her too? Mameha asked, her face full of worry. She used Byakugan and looked into the room next door, to make sure that Hinata was fine. Sure enough, Hinata was sleeping safe and sound in her bed. She's fine, Mameha announced, relieved. That's against the rules, Mameha Ba-sama, Hiyashi pointed out. No one was ever allowed to use their Byakugan to look into another person's room. Mameha gave him a look and asked, your point is? HMPHH, Hiyashi grunted and moved over to inspect the window sill. Hanabi smirked. Mameha Ba-sama could do anything she damned please and no one could or would say anything to her about it. They wouldn't dare. Hanabi wanted to be like her when she grew old. No forced signs of entry, Hiyashi thought. He surveyed the room. Obviously a fight took place here, but seeing that there was no forced sign of entry, they'd have to go with Hanabi's word. Which was going to be a problem when the inquest by the Hyuga Council, and the local investigative squad, takes place. All in all, upon first glance, this would be classified as a murder. He sighed. Leave it to Hanabi to give him gray hairs. Well, what are you going to do? Mameha asked, her voice brimming with excitement. She loved scandals, whether they be classy, or grimy. They added entertainment to her usual dull life. Hiyashi turned to face them, his mind set. Mameha Ba-sama. Contact the Civil Dispute Division of the Anbu, let them send an investigative team down here in the morning. Also get some trustworthy ninja from the main family to preserve the scene. And finally, get a Hyuga medic nin in here, to keep the body in its current state until the Anbu team arrives. As for you Hanabi, he turned toward his daughter. I suggest you clean yourself up, and stay on the estate, preferably in the house. Recall what you know so that when you face the council, later this morning you can tell them what happened in vivid detail. Mameha nodded and eagerly summoned 2 servants to carry out her instructions. Hanabi nodded. Hiyashi surveyed the room again. Hanabi, I also suggest that you find someone to round up the people you roused during your chase. You'll need as much witnesses as possible. Hanabi stared at her father confused. Witnesses. Yes, witnesses. Hiyashi grimly reiterated. Until proven by the council and or the Anbu team, this will be treated as a murder, as there is not enough circumstantial evidence to support what you say was an attempted assassination. There was no sign of forced entry or any jutsu used to get in this room, a vital component if you are to prove your innocence. Not that I'm saying you're guilty or anything, but you must look at this from an objective point of view. Comprehend? Hanabi battled with herself to keep her emotions under wrap. She nodded her head. I understand, father. With that she bowed and left the room. Hiyashi surveyed the scene once again, trying to gain a new impression. He didn't doubt Hanabi's story one bit. It was the council, he feared, which might be quick to pass judgment. Conveniently, this just had to happen when the time of the new head of the clan ceremony was fast approaching. He too wondered if Hinata had anything to do with this, as it seems that the scales were tipping in her favor. Naruto wandered about the village in search of food, and a clear place to settle his thoughts and decide his intentions. He doubted he'd find someplace selling food at this time in the morning or a place to clear his mind. He wanted to think about him and Hanabi and if they had any potential. Well, from his point of view all they had going for the both of them right now was a deep physical attraction. Not that he was complaining, but he wasn't one for one-time flings. He decided he was going to pursue her. His decision to pursue Hanabi brought about another astounding thought to him, that he was completely over his obsession with Sakura. Not to say that he'd given up on her. He still had to have his options, but she'd be more like something to fall back on. He'd noticed that all his efforts had not been in vain, as she was gradually swaying his way. She was more open with him. But enough about Sakura, he was now on Hanabi's wagon. He'd known Hanabi for only about a week and a half now. He figured he needed to get to know her more while he was on vacation. However, the only problem seemed to be Hiyashi and Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi was a problem because he was a publicity risk to Naruto. Since Naruto had been labeled a Hokage hopeful by Tsunade and several other important people, he'd become a sort of a super celebrity. He'd already been a celebrity since people had heard, and some witnessed, him beating Gaara when he was the one-tailed beast. Anyway, because of this, Kakashi and Jiraiya had the brilliant idea to get rich off of him by selling him out to the local tabloids. His whole life was turning into a public event. He had fan clubs that staked out his house sometimes. It was disconcerting. Anyway, the point was that, if anyone got wind that he had his eyes on Hanabi, he would be bothered relentlessly by tabloids, and Hanabi would receive all sorts of death threats from his numerous fan clubs. The death threat thing had happened before. People had noticed that he'd been hung up around Sakura, and so she had been threatened. It wasn't a big deal as no one in their right mind would mess with Sakura. For peace sake, she was the Hokage's apprentice after all. And the one foolish person who had tried to physically threaten Sakura was still in a coma. He wasn't worried about her. He was more worried about what the attention might cause Hanabi. He'd have to talk to her about this thing they had going on. Naruto strolled through the streets completely caught up in his thoughts. Somehow he'd ended up near Iruka's house. Since he was hungry, and Iruka always had a well-stocked pantry, he decided to pay a visit. He just hoped that the man was not doing anything inappropriate. The last time Naruto showed up unannounced, he was privileged enough to catch Iruka and Kakashi having what Sakura called titillating man. She got off on that kind of thing. It was a scarring experience for him. Naruto never made it to Iruka's house though, as when he was a mere corner away from his destination, when he spotted two shadowy figures on the corner of the street. From his experience, shadowy figures were always up to no good. Take Shino for example. Naruto figured he probably used those bugs to spy on little girls and boys. Being the nosy person he was, he faded into the shadows and tried to sneak up on them unnoticed. He was able to get close enough to hear what they were saying but not close enough to actually see them. So was the mission a success? One of the figures asked. He had a deep rumbling voice. No, she is not dead, but there is enough evidence there to frame her. However, I was not told that there was going to be another assassin there. This person had a neutral tone. Someone else was there. Yes, she killed him. She was incredible. Shall I try again? There was a moment of silence. No, I will inform my client of the situation, so wait until you hear from me. You should recuperate. You look like hell. I thought I was done for. She has more than one fighting style, as the one I prepared for was not the one she used. Very well then. I shall obtain more information about her and report it back to you. From what you say, it seems that my client is not the only one interested in doing away with her. That is all until further notice. The shadowy figure nodded. Understood. I will be preparing myself for the next mission. I will not underestimate her again. You shouldn't have to begin with. You couldn't possibly have thought that she was weak. After all, she is in the main family, and one of the heiresses no less. The figure what the deep voice said. The other figure nodded, and with that the two shadowy figures disappeared into the early dawn, oblivious of Naruto. After a few minutes, Naruto emerged from his listening place. See, he was rarely wrong. Suspicious shadowy figures always were up to no good. Since they mentioned main family, he assumed that they were speaking in relation to the Hyuga clan, which meant that something went down not too long ago. He also wondered if they were talking about Hanabi or Hinata. In any event, he needed to let someone know what he'd learnt. He took off in the direction of the Hokage Tower, fighting the soothing fingers of sleep. Oba-chan, Naruto whispered, knocking slightly on the bedroom window of the Hokage. Oba-chan, Naruto let out a yawn. He wanted to go to sleep so badly, but what he'd just heard had to be passed on to someone with a high rank. And because he didn't know of any Anbu, and the Junin he knew were either sleeping or on a mission, he figured the next best person had to be the Hokage. It was a good thing that he was close to Tsunade, or else he would have been up Cookie Creek. If anyone else had tried knocking on the bedroom window of the Hokage, they'd be beaten, arrested, and most likely beaten again. Naruto sighed. Either Tsunade was ignoring him or was in deep drunken slumber. Naruto figured it'd most likely be more the latter than the former. Shoulders slumping in defeat, Naruto turned to leave. He would just have to come back later in the morning. In a rare stroke of genius, Naruto figured that it would be smart to leave a note or something in case he didn't make it back before Tsunade left for work. He took out a pen he had in his pocket and scribbled a brief summary of what he saw on the back of an exploding tag. He then slipped it underneath the door and left, heading towards home. Several hours later Hanabi hugged her knees to her chest, and let the streams of water cover her like a blanket. Even though the water was beating heavily on her face, she could still feel the hot tears escape from her eyes. She could not find any witnesses who were willing to vie for her. They were either too scared of her or thought she deserved what was happening to her. In fact, since news got out that the assassin she killed was a Hyuga, the whole estate seemed to be against her. It was almost as if the whole estate had wished if the assassin had actually killed her. She wondered the possibility for a brief moment if the clan actually was out to get her. She could remember all of the hurtful things everyone said when she went to the Branch family asking for witnesses. If they didn't slam their door in her face, they called her names and said unrepeatable things. Had she really been that bad towards them? Was she really a bitch? The only people who'd been helping her was Neji, Mameha Ba-sama, her father, and, believe it or not, Hinata, though Hinata pretended that she could care less. Hanabi figured if things weren't looking great in her favor, she'd have to make a run for it. She wasn't going to die just yet. She couldn't leave Konoha though. If she did, there would be an endless search for her. Every moment she'd have to be on the run. There was no such thing as a Hyuga missing nin, the set who tried often didn't make it very far. Konoha had far too much allies for her to hide anywhere fast. It would take a long time to get to enemy territory, and besides, before she even reached, she would bound to buck up with Konoha allies or ninja. If she were to run, her only choice would be to hide in plain sight. And to do that, you needed friends, something she didn't have. She could only think of one person who'd have a weak inkling to want to help her, and she doubted that person would want to put up with the risk. Then again, Hanabi scowled. Also, since word got out, the Branch family had been calling her by her name only. Instead of Miss Hanabi or Hanabi-sama, it was now Hanabi or you girl. Not that she minded, but it was sort of disconcerting. By the way, she had guards now, from the Branch family. She found them funny because all of them knew that, if she really wanted to, she could kick their asses and make a run for it. They were afraid of her. Hanabi sighed and turned off the water. She stood up and stretched. Water ran down her body like tiny rivulets ran down a mountain. In a moment of complete randomness, she stepped out of the tub and shook herself like a dog, causing water to splash everywhere. She stood in front of the fogged-up mirror and quickly tied her hair into a loose ponytail. Then she pulled a few strands loose from both sides of her hair that they fell loose over her face. The loose bangs was an added benefit as they helped hide her features, thus if she lost focus, her bangs would hide anything her face might reveal. Usually she wore her hair out, much like her father does, but special occasions called for practicality. In the event that she had to run, she'd look more dangerous this way, especially with her newly perfected glare. They'd think twice before attacking her. Hanabi carefully tied the kunai pouch to both thighs. They were special kunai that would not be detected by any Byakugan. They were complements of Mameha Ba-sama. She then donned on her fishnet shirt, followed by a sleeveless black shirt. Then she quickly slipped on a pants skirt so short that they couldn't be classified as an article of clothing. They had to be short, so that they didn't get in the way if she needed to use the kunai. At least the skirt part was a modest length, it had a high slit. You couldn't really notice it if she didn't move fast. Then finally, she shrugged on her Hyuga robe. It was a thick cloak made of a heavy material. It was almost a burden to put on. With one last check in the mirror, Hanabi donned on her new glare and walked out of the bathroom. When Hanabi entered the living room, everyone quieted and turned to look at her. She'd been looking at the ground, but as soon as she held her head up and unleashed her piercing glare, everyone turned their head elsewhere, pretending to find something else of interest. Hanabi glanced around the room. It seemed that the Anbu investigative team had yet to arrive. She recognized the Hyuga medical examiner talking with someone from the council. Some reps from the Branch family was here, along with a few of the guard. Hinata and Neji were nowhere to be seen. So who was going to speak on her behalf, or was she to speak for herself? Not that it mattered, she was always on her own. She claimed a seat next to a member from the council. This member was known as the worst one in the decrepit bunch of retired ninja and Hyuga heads that made up the council. So, the elder member began, "How did you kill him? They aren't letting us in to see the murdered body until the Anbu have arrived." Hanabi almost flinched at the word murder. In a sharp and arrogant tone that was bound to irritate the old member, she replied, "The unfortunate assassin met his ill-fated demise from a reflexive Jukin strike to the chest. It was a technique that was to be used in dire circumstances. And I do believe that being in a corner, with someone trying to cut your throat is a dire circumstance. Don't you think?" With that said, Hanabi raised her chin at the council member, and rudely turned her head at him. It felt good to put him in his place. She tried not to smirk when she heard Mameha Ba-sama shout from somewhere in the kitchen, "You let him know, girl." Several of the other people, who were in the room, snickered. The council member made a rude noise and walked proudly outside. After his exit, the tension in the room became noticeably lighter. Hanabi was about to leave, to go and obtain something to drink, when a servant announced that the Anbu had arrived. Hanabi instantly went in panic mode, though her face was still impassive. The moment of dread was approaching fast, and she was not ready for it, despite the pep rallies she'd been giving herself in the bathroom. Hanabi had been expecting the investigative team to consist of a few masked ninja, however, she and everyone else was surprised to see the Hokage's aide accompanying the team. The medical ninja dressed in her usual dark robe was the odd one out amongst the Anbu, who were dressed in the standard black cloak. Shizune glanced around the room, searching for Hanabi. She'd heard a lot about the girl from Kakashi. She found it interesting that Hanabi would choose Naruto to have an affair with. According to Kakashi, he'd caught the two on several occasions in very compromising positions. Of course, this was supposedly a secret, as Naruto would never pass Hyuga standards. Shizune let out a chuckle as she gazed the room, which caused several of the infamously arrogant people to stare at her. She pretended not to hear the curious whispers as to why the Hokage sent her own aide along with the Anbu. A murder within the Hyuga compound was big news. The Hokage sending her aide and guard to investigate a murder was bigger news. Shizune figured her presence here would add fuel to the gossip mill that was already ablaze. Before Shizune could approach Hanabi, Hiyashi materialized in front of her and said, "I am most surprised that you are here, Shizune-sama. I can't begin to fathom why the Hokage sent her aide, or how she got to know of this case, as the rest of the clan is just becoming aware of this incident." Shizune smiled at him and said, "Hiyashi-sama, it is quite a pleasure to meet you, though not under these circumstances." They bowed to each other before Hiyashi motioned for her to follow. "As for why Tsunade-sama sent me," she continued, "I myself do not know what her true motive for sending me here for. However, I can tell you that she is most interested in Hanabi, although I have yet to figure out why. I presume, if she was not so busy, she would have come here herself." It wasn't until Shizune stopped talking that she realized that almost everyone who was in the room was behind them. Hiyashi thought for a moment before asking, "How is it that Hokage-sama became aware of this incident so fast? I mean, I know she has access to an unlimited information channels, but it is an enigma that has me truly puzzled." Before Shizune could answer him, he quickly added, "I don't mean to come across as defensive, but I would like to know if I would need to tighten security around here." "Ah," Shizune said, she'd been expecting this question. "Well, if it wasn't for Naruto, she wouldn't have known about it." Shizune replied, "Well, funny thing about that really, one of our ninjas who was on patrol spotted some suspicious-looking people, which he chose to shadow. The people he shadowed just happened to be one of the assassins that got away and his boss or something. Our ninja wasn't able to follow them, so he documented what he saw, and slipped it underneath the Hokage's office. Naturally, when Tsunade-sama went in, she spotted it and sent us straight away." The ninja hadn't left his name, so we weren't able to do an immediate follow-up, but an inquest is ongoing. Tsunade had told her that she was not supposed to reveal that Naruto was the one who'd found out about the assassin. Tsunade was being cautious just in case the people behind the assassination were in the clan itself. She didn't want anyone ordering a hit on Naruto. Hanabi, who'd been listening to Shizune's explanation, almost wept in relief. Shizune's presence and explanation was all the witness she's need. Though, it would even be better if she could find out who this ninja was and asked him to testify on her behalf. She'd be in the clear soon enough if things went her way. When the group of 15 or more ninjas reached the supposed crime scene, Hiyashi undid the seal in front of the door, and told the Hyuga medic nin, who were inside preventing the seal from destroying the body, that they were now relieved of their duty. The Anbu quickly substituted with the Hyuga medics, and kept on preventing the seal from activating. Shizune had yet to do her examination of the body. When Shizune stepped into the room, and crouched over the body, everyone decided they wanted to see what she was doing. Thus, they tried to squeeze themselves into the room, which was only big enough to host 5 people comfortably. Noticing the sudden increase in body heat, Shizune faced the crowd of arrogant seniors and politely said, "I think it would be easier, and much faster, if there were less people in the room. So with the exception of Hanabi and Hiyashi-sama, I would greatly appreciate it if the rest of you would please leave." When no one budged, she added, "Unless you guys are willing to see me slice open this body, exposing decaying flesh and viscous blood, while I use my scalpel to scrape away organ tissue and bone tissue to be analyzed, to which I'll also have to remove organs, which is bound to be unpleasant as they'll be a horrid yellowish-green tinge, and there might be maggots in the intestines that I might have to remove, let's not forget the smell which could pose several serious health risks along with." The room was empty before she got to finished. Shizune, along with 1 or 2 of the Anbu, chuckled when the door closed with a bang. "What a shame, ninjas that are squeamish, lol," Shizune said, prepping her hand. An unnerved Hanabi, along with a slightly twitching Hiyashi, stood in one corner away from Shizune, looking quite uncomfortable. Hanabi swallowed and asked, Shizune-sama, are you really going to do that stuff?" Hanabi was quite sure if she had to sit and watched what Shizune described, she'd either pass out or show the medic nin a digested version of what she had for breakfast. "Of course not," Shizune exclaimed, "I only said that to get rid of them." Shizune swore she saw Hiyashi sighed in relief. Returning her attention back to the task at hand, Shizune proceeded to inspect the body, which detailed her running one hand covered in blue chakra down the length and width of the body, while running another hand covered in green chakra up the width and length of the body. Hanabi had no clue as to what the medical ninja was doing, but from a visual perspective it looked like she was either molesting the body or sensing for something. Hanabi preferred to think the medic nin was doing the latter. Shizune stood up, her task complete. She cleansed her hands and stated, "Well, cause of death is major damage to all major internal organs, definitely a deed done by a Hyuga. So, care to tell me what happened?" Hiyashi redirected Shizune's questioning gaze to Hanabi. Hanabi sighed and recounted in meticulous detail what happened. After that was done, Shizune recorded what was said on a scroll she had hidden in the mystiques of her robes. "So that is all?" Hiyashi asked. He had to take care of some other important business now, along with scheduling the time for Hanabi's trial. Shizune nodded at his question and watched as he exited the room. Through the open door, she could see the people who she'd kick out swarm around him like bees to honey. Hanabi was about to follow suit but was stopped in her tracks when Shizune placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "May I have a word with you, in private?" Hanabi awkwardly nodded and motioned for Shizune to follow her. Shizune sent one of the Anbu a glance before following Hanabi out. She was confident that they could handle the job from here on out. Hanabi led Shizune, in silence, past the main family complexes, past the training grounds and into the forest. When she was satisfied that they were a good distance away from prying eyes, she stopped. Shizune smirked and playfully asked, "Are we even in the border anymore?" Shall I summon Tun Tun and ask her to fetch my travel documents? Despite her impassive composure, Hanabi heard a rare chuckle escape her lips. Hanabi said, "The reason I took you so far is that they can still use their Byakugan to read our lips. This way, if they try, they'd have to be quite near, and I'd sense them if they did." Shizune nodded, not that she minded. Anyway, Shizune started, "The reason I asked to speak with you is to tell you that I lied when I said that we didn't know who the ninja was that tipped us off." At Hanabi's puzzled expression, Shizune explained, "We have reason to believe that the hit on you was ordered by someone within your clan, and if I had revealed the name, they might have tried to get him too. Now the reason I am telling you this is because you will need all the help you can get. From an objective point of view of the crime scene, you look guilty by all accounts. Tsunade-sama wishes your well-being only because you seem to make our tipster happy, and she favors him like a grandson. By now you probably know who I am talking about. Our tipster was Naruto. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but what I do know is that, if you can get him to testify on your behalf, you'll be in the clear as, through him, you'll have the backing of the Hokage, indirectly. Have fun trying to get him to willingly come down to the estate to testify, lol. Well, I have to give my report. Good luck." With that said, Shizune vanished in a swirl of leaves. A confounded Hanabi slowly slid to the forest floor. Great, now she had to see the blonde. Hanabi blushed at the last time they spoke. She wouldn't mind if things went the way they were going last time they met, though given her current situation, things were bound to be awkward if they did. She fingered the piece of paper in her hand with Naruto's address. He'd better be home, she thought, or else. End. Wops. Chappy done. I know, it was crappy, I knew it was crappy. This was more like a filler for me. For some odd reason, I've been suffering severe writer's block. I was aiming for my usual 8 pages but I couldn't make it. _. So, you might not be seeing anything from me for this story for a while, though I might update a nameless story, or my story on Fiction Press. I've neglected that for so long. If I update this before the end of September, it's because I had a random burst of imagination. So, on to good news, I'll be starting college soon, like in 3 weeks, _yay me. 3 I wasn't lost to the dark recesses of society, I'm going to learn stuff again I hardly will ever use, woot. After quietly sneaking off of the estate, Hanabi stealthily made her way towards the address Shizune-sama had given to her. She had to make this unannounced visit as fast as possible. If they, the council elders, discovered she was off the premises without being authorized to leave, her situation would worsen. She could already imagine them coming up with some crackpot reason as to why she left without telling anybody. She imagined they'd accuse her of planning her escape when she will be proven guilty or some other bullshit along those lines. Hanabi looked at the address in her hand and then at the fading address on the sign in front of her. Sure enough, the addresses matched, but she wasn't sure if she was in the right place. She'd never been allowed to go to this district before, and now she knew why. This part of Konoha would be called or classified as a dump or a slum. As she never been here before, she didn't know what term was used. In any event, she was prepared. Although she never visited this district before, she had heard more than enough about it to make her cautious. After quietly sneaking off of the estate, Hanabi stealthily made her way towards the address Shizune-sama had given to her. She had to make this unannounced visit as fast as possible. If they, the council elders, discovered she was off the premises without being authorized to leave, her situation would worsen. She could already imagine them coming up with some crackpot reason as to why she left without telling anybody. She imagined they'd accuse her of planning her escape when she will be proven guilty or some other bullshit along those lines. Hanabi looked at the address in her hand and then at the fading address on the sign in front of her. Sure enough, the addresses matched, but she wasn't sure if she was in the right place. She'd never been allowed to go to this district before, and now she knew why. This part of Konoha would be called or classified as a dump or a slum. As she never been here before, she didn't know what term was used. any event she was prepared. Although she never visited this district before, she had heard more than enough about it to make her cautious. Still, she couldn't believe Naruto would live in a place like this. She reckoned he was probably a poor ninja or something, which was surprising considering his fame. In fact, she didn't even know what he was famous for, just that he was famous. She figured she'd ask him later. Well, if he was willing to help her, she'd pay him back by giving him a more decent place to live. She could more than afford it. And what made her happy about that was that if she did help him out, she'd be using her own money and nothing from the clan. Hanabi frowned at the houses and buildings with their overgrown yards, graffitied walls, and boarded up windows. Yep, she thought as she passed them, he could do better. She'd see to it that he does better. After all, a Hyuga like herself shouldn't be involved with someone who would choose to live in such an environment. Well, if he was willing to help her, she'd pay him back by giving him a more decent place to live. She could more than afford it. And what made her happy about that was that if she did help him out, she'd be using her own money and nothing from the clan. Conveniently for Hanabi, there were few people about on the dilapidated streets, and those who were about blended in with the dirty dumpsters and the ugly trash that decorated the ground. Hanabi roamed the area looking for Naruto's apartment. The paper Shizune-sama had given her had stated that he lived on the top floor of the only 5-story building in the area. She had also said that there was no way Hanabi could miss the structure as Naruto had put his signature on the building. When Hanabi found the building, she did a double take. Then she grinned. The building was shaped like a rectangle with a square cut out in the middle of it. The square served as a courtyard of sorts. The building, in its entirety, was painted a dull blue color, except for the top floor, which was painted a dull orange color with brighter orange swirls placed at random places on the walls. Thus the building ended up having a single orange stripe. Hanabi chuckled again. She wondered how Naruto managed to persuade the landlords to paint the building that color. She admired the building as she walked through the gates and up the stairs. She counted 4 doors on each floor, and concluded that the apartments had to be spacious, as the building itself could take up half of the branch family's training grounds, and the training ground was excessively huge. Hanabi arrived at the top floor and glanced around. There was only one door on this floor. She shrugged and walking down the long hallway and knocked on it. She waited a few seconds before knocking on it again. A minute passed and she knocked on the door again. After 5 minutes, she started pounding on the door. She was sure he was home. He didn't seem like the type to rise anytime before noon, and it was only around 10 or so. Hanabi was so into pounding at the door that she didn't realize she'd been pounding on Naruto's chest until he grabbed a hold of her hand. Sorry, Hanabi's apology was interrupted as Naruto yanked her into the room and slammed the door shut. Hanabi stumbled into the flat. She grabbed a hold of a small table to prevent herself from falling down. Naruto scowled. He despised being rudely awakened when he was sleeping. And Hanabi pounding on his door was, by his standards, considered to be rude. He was always irritable and cranky when he woke up early. He stalked past Hanabi and headed towards the kitchen. After pouring himself a cup of juice, he realized that Hanabi wasn't in the kitchen with him. He screwed up his face in annoyance and walked back out to the front. As he suspected, she was still standing by the door, analyzing his flat. "Are you coming or not?" he asked, leaning against the archway that led to the kitchen. Hanabi scowled at him and replied, "You know, standard etiquette states that a person should stay put unless invited in." Quote. Naruto scoffed and went back into the kitchen. Hanabi smirked and took her shoes off before following Naruto. She had to say though, his flat looked expensive. Mahogany flooring, satin couches, a flat-screen TV that took up half a wall, and lots of space were a few things that she noticed as she followed him. Though, it wasn't until she arrived at the kitchen and peeked through another archway located at the other end of the vast kitchen that she realized the entire top floor was his flat. Naruto settled himself on the edge of the wooden metal island, sipped his juice, and stared at Hanabi for a few seconds. He thought it funny that she matched his kitchen. He could grow accustomed to seeing her in his kitchen. Who was he kidding? He told himself. He didn't even know her that well. The only thing that they'd established was that they were physically attracted to each other. He sighed. He wondered if there would be anything more than physical attraction between them. He doubted it though. She didn't seem like the strings attached type. Little did he know that similar thoughts were racing through Hanabi's mind. So, Naruto started, "What brings you knocking at my door so early in the morning?" Hanabi scoffed and rolled her eyes. She shrugged out of her Hyuga robes and neatly folded it over the back of a chair. She then sat on a stool that was opposite the island, and turned it around so that she was facing Naruto and her back was pressed against the counter. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the regalia she was wearing underneath the robe. "Going or coming from a mission?" he asked. He wondered if she always dressed like that under those robes. Something told him she did. It left much to his imagination. "You know," Hanabi started in a condescending tone, "you have bad social skills. I'd like something to drink, please." Naruto merely raised an eyebrow and said, "So, you come to my house and wake me up out of my much-needed rest, to ask me for something to drink?" Naruto watched as Hanabi's lips quivered for the slightest of seconds. He assumed that was her version of a chuckle. He hopped off the island and fished around in his cupboards for a clean glass. He rinsed it out, then poured her some juice. He handed it to her. Hanabi took the glass and stared at it as if it was some type of deadly poison. She looked up at him. "Who told you I wanted juice?" she asked. "Ah, that's too bad," Naruto replied. "I only stock juice and ramen in my house." Hanabi drank it anyway. "Ah, I need your help with a little problem I have," Hanabi stated. "Does this concern the assassination thing?" Naruto asked, reclaiming his seat on the island. He'd figured that someone from the Hyuga clan would be seeking him out soon. Seeing as he overheard the assassins talking, it was fate or convenience or luck that it happened to be Hanabi. "Yeah," Hanabi replied. She figured it would be best if she got straight to the point. "You see, 2 ninjas came to assassinate me a few hours after you left." She blushed. "I killed one of them and the other one escaped. The one I killed happened to be a Hyuga from the branch family and so." Naruto listened intently as Hanabi gave him a detailed version of what happened, and why she needed his help. "I believe someone is trying to frame me," Hanabi concluded. It was the only reasonable and logical assumption she could have come up with. "Why do you think that?" Naruto asked, quite bemused. "The title match for clan leader is coming up. If anything happens to me, for example if I die or become imprisoned, Hinata automatically gets the title and vice versa," Hanabi stated. "I think this is all some part of a scheme to ensure Hinata becomes leader." Hanabi frowned, and a thought ran through her mind. Would it be that bad if Hinata became leader? The only consequence of that would be her getting sealed. Surely there was some way to bypass that though. "I'm kind of sketchy on Hyuga standards," Naruto admitted, "but if Hinata won, wouldn't that mean you'd get sealed?" "Yes, it would," Hanabi replied. "And that's the only problem. I'd gladly hand over my title as heiress to her if that stupid sealing rule wasn't in place." She scowled. She detested them and their ridiculous traditions. Naruto lowered his face, so that she wouldn't see his smile. He couldn't help it. She looked sort of cute when she scowled. Here she was, asking him for his help, and all he could do was smile at her and think how cute she was. He also found it funny that they'd officially met only 2 weeks ago, and here she was sitting up in his kitchen, like they were old friends or something. "So, what do you want me to do about that?" Naruto asked, puzzled. He was positive there was nothing he could do about the sealing thing. Or maybe there was something. Hanabi sighed. She felt almost defeated. "Well, there's nothing you can do about the sealing thing. But, you can help me out of this trial thing. Shizune-sama told me that you overheard the assassin who escaped. If you can make a convincing argument to the council, on my behalf, that they were assassins, then I'd be home free. Will you do it for me?" She swallowed. Please. Naruto smiled at her. Yeah, I'll do it. But what's in it for me? This time, Hanabi smirked. She was expecting he'd say something like that. I figured you'd say something like that, so, is a repeat of last night good for you? Hell, she wouldn't mind doing it. She was actually enjoying herself, until Kakashi and that pink-haired girl popped up. She had a nasty feeling that they were up to something. Naruto considered her offer. He'd be stupid if he didn't accept her offer, but what's to say that after this whole ordeal is over, she'd go about her business, pretending he never existed. He started, you make an exceptional offer. Hanabi blushed and lowered her face. But, he continued, I'll have to take your offer before my board of directors for deliberation. Give me a minute, will you? This will not take long. Hanabi stared at him as he made 3 shadow clones. The clones in Naruto moved to one side of the kitchen, and were actually debating her offer. Hanabi could not believe that he was serious. A rare chuckle escaped her lips, as the debate was concluded. The clones vanished, and Naruto walked back over to her, with a mile-wide smile plastered on his face. Well, the board of directors does not approve of your offer, he started. Hanabi almost fell out of her chair. However, the board is willing to compromise your offer. Instead of a repeat performance, I want to go on a date with you, a real one. How about that? Sure, I guess, Hanabi replied. She wondered when things had become so friendly between them. I guess I'll get back now. I'm not even supposed to be off the estate. The trial starts at 3. You'd better come. She slid off her seat and glided towards Naruto, who merely raised an eyebrow. As an incentive, Hanabi rose on the tips of her toes and kissed him teasingly on the lips. Before Naruto's hands could pull her towards him, she quickly stepped out his reach. Nah, come and maybe you'll get another one, she quickly slipped on her robes. You know, you are a very good tease. Naruto stated, while he followed her to the door. Hanabi paused before she descended the staircase, and said, I like you. I don't know why yet, but I like you. Expect to get teased often. She stuck out her tongue and disappeared down the stairs. Naruto chuckled to himself. He was so going to enjoy his day. He was going to make it fun, seeing as this was his last day of vacation. Hanabi silently and stealthily crept back onto the estate. As she made her way around the branch family quarters, she realized her absence went unnoticed. Any branch family members she came across either avoided looking at her or sent her glares. However, when she entered the main family compound, she received nods and small greetings from those who thought they were superior to the branch family. She fixed a scowl to her face and ignored them. As she walked lazily through the house, she realized most of the elders and servants and branch family representatives, who were there earlier, were now absent. She figured they were probably in a meeting with her father. She sighed. It wasn't like she was really worried about the trial, because if push came to shove, she could just invoke the third Hyuga Act, which would, in case she was proven guilty, halt all trial proceedings until the title match took place. The only problem with this was that if she lost the match she would be at the mercy of Hinata. And since Hinata had the branch family in her bosom, they'd be expecting her to dish out a cruel punishment to Hanabi as retribution for killing the assassin. Speaking of Hinata, she wondered if she had anything to do with this whole assassination thing. Hanabi turned on her heel and headed towards Hinata's room. Hanabi found it strange that no one was casting eyes at her sister. Then again, everyone thought Hinata was a generous, gentle soul. The fools, Hanabi thought. As she made her way towards her sister's room, she noticed the door was cracked open a sliver. Hanabi placed her palm on the door and pushed it open. Hina-ta. She faltered at the sight before her. Oh wow, Hanabi thought. So here was her saintly sister pushed up against the wall, hair mustard, skin flush, with one leg wrapped around some guy's back, arms wrapped tightly around his neck, and she was so passionately faced that she nor her buddy noticed Hanabi. The fact that the two of them here missing a few items of clothing only made Hanabi deduce that they were about to do something naughty. Hanabi stayed in the doorway unnoticed as the guy buried his head in the Hinata's neck, causing her to throw back her head and moan rather loudly. A malicious grin broke out on Hanabi's face. Whoa, any louder and people might think you're in pain, Hanabi stated with a smirk on her face. Hinata's eyes flew open in shock. Hanabi. She pushed herself away from her lover and quickly donned her robe, which was pulled around her feet. Hanabi. Hinata said, out of breath, how dare you enter my room without announcing yourself? I could have you punished for that. Actually, dear sister, Hanabi started, in a bored drawl, your door was never closed. It was crack open. How was I supposed to know that you were entertaining somebody in here? Hinata looked lost for words. She was getting so angry that her breath came out in ragged pants. Get out of my room. It was then that Hanabi noticed the guy was avoiding looking in her direction. She completely ignored her sister's demands and tried to catch a glimpse of his face. But every time she came close to him, he'd move away from her, or deliberately turn his head in the other direction. All she could see was a mass of black hair in a style she would say resembled the back of a small chicken. Darting underneath Hinata's reach, Hanabi managed to grab a hold of the guy. She was about to turn him around when Hinata grabbed her by the back of her robes and flung her forcefully out of her room. Hinata glared at her sister. You will speak of none of this. Hanabi snorted and quickly kicked Hinata in her shin and fled down the hall, into the safe confines of her own room. She locked her door and laughed maliciously. She wondered if Hinata realized her Byakugan was on. She doubted it though, she only had it on for a second or two, just enough to glimpse the guy's face. Hanabi smirked as she smoothed out her robe. She now had something to blackmail Hinata with. She'd been surprised to find out that it was not Kiba, however, she couldn't put a name to the guy's face though she was sure she'd seen him before. Pushing him and Hinata out of her mind, Hanabi quietly snuck back out of her room and made a beeline for the library. Hopefully, she'd be able to find something in there that would help her case. Naruto walked through the main business square in Konoha in the disguise of an old maid. It was the disguise he always used when leaving his home to go to his other house. Because he was becoming so famous, he figured he needed two houses. His first house was an expansive structure located in the heart of the main business square. This house served as a decoy for the media. In fact, any person who resided in the business square was famous in some way. And because of this, the square was frequented by media vultures waiting outside at all hours of the night, salivating, just to snap a picture of a celebrity. Naruto was smart enough to build his second house in the heart of the slums, the last place any media-affiliated person would think to look for him. And while he was in his house in the slums, he had a shadow clone walking about in his house in the square. Occasionally the clone would come outside to empty the garbage or wave at people, just to give the guys that he really was there. Thus, every morning, Naruto would walk to his decoy house in the guise of an old maid who worked for Naruto. Sure enough, most of his friends knew about his little plan to escape the media, but only Tsunade and Shizune, well and Hanabi now, knew where he truly lived. Oh, and Kakashi too. Till this day, Naruto still couldn't figure out how Kakashi found out. Naruto, playing his disguise well, hobbled through the square with the gait of an old woman. Many people hailed him and made way for him to pass. If it was one thing he learned from playing an old person is that the elderly received automatic respect for everything. They were allowed to skip lines, and got preferential treatment to everybody else, even the most famous of celebrities. Naruto smiled wryly at himself. He'd often abused this privilege. In fact, whenever he went to pay bills or do business in the square, he went in the guise of the old maid. He kept telling himself that one of these days he'd get caught. Naruto hobbled up the steps towards his decoy house. He ignored the flashes of light as media vultures took pictures of him as he opened the door. Naruto's maid arriving to work as usual, would be the caption of this picture in tomorrow's tabloid paper. He chuckled to himself. As soon as he closed the door, his clone appeared in front of him. While he made his way to the kitchen, The clone briefed him on what all activities happened during the night. He didn't miss much. He vanished his clone and dispelled his disguise. Naruto glanced at the clock. He still had about 2 hours to go before Hanabi's little trial thingy started. Since he'd thought up a good argument for her while he was walking here, he pretty much had nothing left to do. Grabbing a bottle of juice out of the fridge, he waddled to the living room and switched on the TV. Just in time to catch the beginning of Ino's show. You see, when Ino wasn't on a mission or on an assignment from Tsunade, or helping out with her parents' flower shop, she was an anchorwoman on everyone's favorite tabloid channel, Konoha Entertainment. KE was the channel the general public watched when they wanted the scoop and scandals of their favorite celebrities. Naruto could remember several times when Ino had tried to get him to do something scandalous, so she could dramatically announce it to the public. Naruto chuckled. Though he had to say, Ino had the face and the voice for it. He turned up the volume as Ino began her show. Good afternoon, Konoha. This is your ever favorite and beautiful anchorwoman, Ino Yamanaka speaking. She grinned brightly now. I know all of you are wondering who's gonna be our celebrity highlight for today. Well, let me tell you, it's no other than our favorite Hokage hopeful, and unpredictable ninja, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto smirked as a picture of him flashed on the screen. He wondered what Ino thought up this time. Now, since Naruto's fame began to spread through Konoha, everyone's been trying to catch him in some scandalous activity. Her grin got even wider. Well, our Mr. Good Deeds has been good until now. She now wore a wicked grin. Asterisk. Was almost as if she was smirking at Naruto herself. Naruto merely quirked his eye at the screen. They'd tried to pin him down in some scandalous activity before, but it didn't work. He doubted it'd work this time. We, at KE, have managed to get our greedy little paws on a certain item that would prove to all that Naruto Uzumaki is as scandalous as they come. Now, I know you all are like, what is she talking about? But, I tell you, it is very compromising. She chuckled. Now everyone thought that Naruto's love interest was the unyielding Sakura Haruno, the general director of the main hospital. However, this picture proves us very wrong. An intimate picture of Naruto and Hanabi flashed on the screen, and Naruto spat the juice out of his mouth. It was a picture of him and Hanabi when they first met, when she'd fallen on him out of the tree. Her hair was cascading round her head so her face wasn't visible. And she hadn't worn her Hyuga robes that night so she would still remain anonymous. But it was clear that she was on top of Naruto in the picture. It wouldn't have been a bad picture if they were standing next to each other, but they were in such an intimate position that people would mistake them for lovers. But weren't they? Well, they had the potential to become lovers. Oh my gosh, Naruto thought. He was so screwed over. At least Hanabi was safe. There are thousands upon thousands of girls with black hair in Konoha. Oh yeah, that's Naruto alright. The question is, who is this femme fatale that has our Naruto in her little clutches? We would love to know. Wouldn't you also like to know how long this affair has been going on? Can you imagine if this chick turned out to be someone important? Or is it a mistress? Oh wow, wouldn't that be scandalously scandalous? Join us next week at this same time, and we just might have some answers for you. She smiled dazzlingly. This was brought to you by. Naruto shut off the TV. He wondered if Hanabi saw that. He figured she'd be serious, seeing as her title match was coming up and all. He could already imagine having to implore all his creativity in devising ways to avoid and evade the media. The show hadn't even been over 3 minutes yet and he could already hear the tabloids ringing his doorbell and pounding on his door. As he thought about it, he let out a frustrated yell. There was only one person who was there at the time who could have taken that picture. Naruto gathered himself together. He was going to have a little session with Kakashi. But first, he'd have to duck out the media. Oh well, he thought, time for the old lady disguise again. Hinata paced a path in the floor of her room whilst muttering expletives quietly to herself. Oh wow, I never knew you had such a potty mouth, her lover teased. Hinata snatched a pillow off her bed and threw it at him in retaliation. The guy caught it and chuckled. Don't get mad at me. I told you to come to my place, but no, you were so sure that we wouldn't be disturbed. Hinata sent him a glare. And he smiled wryly at her. The guy glided up behind her and passionately embraced her. He buried his face in her hair and placed a kiss at the nape of her neck. Swaying with her in the gentle breeze that was blowing through an open window, he said, "You know, I could take care of her if you want me to." Hinata leaned into the embrace and her anger disappeared. She thought for a moment. "No," she stated, "I'll do it myself. I know exactly how to deal with her." Her lover released her and pouted. "You never let me do anything for you," her lover whined while twirling her around. Hinata stared into his flawless face and a smirk formed on her face. "Really? I was thinking that I let you do a lot most of the time. You did a lot last week, especially last week." Her lover blushed and Hinata grinned. "I mean, besides that, you always do stuff yourself. I want to help," her lover said, moving away from her to dress himself. Hinata thought for a quick second. He had wanted to help her for some time now, but she didn't really want to involve him. But she knew if she kept denying his help, he'd do something to help her anyway. And that was what she was afraid of. He could jeopardize her whole plan. Thus she had to think of a way to keep Hai occupied, while making him believe he was helping her out. Or maybe, he really could help her out. She was unsure what the clan's next move would be due to this whole assassination attempt on Hanabi. After the whole trial was over and the Branch family was satisfied, people would start pointing fingers at her. And she'd be clouded with suspicion seeing that Hanabi was her opponent, and she would be the only one to benefit if something were to happen to Hanabi. "Well," Hinata started, "if you want to help so badly, you could find out who sent those assassins. That would be a great help." Her lover merely raised an eye. "I thought you didn't care about that." "As much as I don't want to, I do care," Hinata said truthfully. "Regardless of our differences, Hanabi still is my sister. And as much as I like to berate her, I'd miss her if she died. Well, that and I'd be crowded in suspicion seeing that I'm contesting her for clan leader." Her lover said, figuring out her reasoning behind her request. "I see, killing two birds with one stone. If you could present the person who hired the assassin to the main family, you'd be a little in their favor. Or if you could prove that there was no assassin, and Hanabi simply murdered him, the Branch family would definitely be in your family." "Smart." He nodded his head at her in approval. "As always, you're quick to everything," Hinata said, smiling at him. She placed a kiss on his cheek. "Now get out of here, and try not to get catched by the guards. I've work to do. I'll come by you in a day or two to see what you've come up with." Her lover bowed to her in a mock gesture. "As you wish, you my lady." He hopped out the window and vanished in a blur of black. Hinata smiled. Now that he was pursuing that avenue, it left her time to devote a lot of attention to Hanabi. She cursed herself for leaving her door unlocked. Well, that's what she got for being impatient. Now, she had to find a new card to hold over Hanabi's head until her lover found out who hired the assassin. Hinata hummed a tune to herself while she made her way to the library for some quiet reading and planning. She was pleased with herself. Her plan was working after all. Occupy Hanabi with some guy so that she'd be too distracted to focus on her campaign for clan leader. It was working well, if she must say so herself. It was a pity that the guy had to be Naruto. The Elder Council was enamored with the Hokage, and anyone who had the Hokage in their back pocket would be in the council's favor. And since Naruto was the Hokage's heart, anyone who had Naruto ultimately had the Hokage. That was the only drawback with Hanabi pursuing Naruto. But it was something Hinata could easily fix. Hinata smiled and greeted the few servants and old heads she passed on her way to the library. She was going to look for some Hyuga law that would save Hanabi in case she was guilty of her supposed crime. Why was she going to do this? For appearances and promotional reasons, of course. Wouldn't she look good if she played the concerned sister looking out for her little sister's well-being? Yep, Of course she would. Hinata chuckled to herself. Soon, she'd have this whole clan wrapped around her little finger, whether they liked it or not.